Okay, so moving on to our next speaker, we have Chris Bolton, who's the CEO of TheraCann International. Chris is a senior executive with a proven reputation for creating a corporate vision to maximize multi-stakeholder input and the knowledge and passion to implement that vision on a global scale. He has multi-industry experience, and at TheraCann International, Chris is responsible for managing the overall operations of the company. He is focused on communicating the vision and mission of TheraCann International with the goal of confirming and discovering what policies, products, and marketing strategies will help them remain a key market influencer, leader, and innovator in the legal industrial hemp and commercial cannabis sector. So welcome, Chris. Appreciate you being here with us. Chris. Is Chris on?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Jim.
There you go.
Oh, perfect.
Okay, well, it's an absolute pleasure to be here today. And just to start off with a bit of tongue-in-cheek, based on Emily's reference to a Gardner cycle. The Gardner hype cycle is used all the way through the industry. We use it all the time. But just for some fun today, look it up for emerging quarantine, just to get a kick out of it and put a smile on your face for today. Give a bit of a lighten up with regards to our COVID situation. Today's talk is just about that. We're going to review the opportunities that are springboarding from the challenges that we are facing. And as part of what I wanted to also discuss today, and thank you, Jim, for that great intro, is our history as a company goes back almost 16 years. And it started originally as Benchmark Laboratories Group, a Canadian accredited ISO 17025 group of laboratories that was doing court defensible data on regulatory compliance analysis, both chemical and biological. And it was during that course of our work with agricultural products that became clear that cannabis is not wheat, it's not canola, and it's certainly not a tomato or a cucumber. For those of you that don't know, cannabis is often known as a phytoremediation plant. The cannabis plant is a weed, and it loves to take whatever it finds in the soil. And in this case, heavy metals. And so for even our friends in Colombia, I've had the opportunity to review some of these projects where they thought they would get a good tax break or benefit in getting a tailing pond next to an abandoned mine for tax. Only found out that the plant was really good at remediating the soil around the mine, but completely discounted the fact that the product can now no longer be sold. It loves to take up arsenic. We're getting involved in a project in Vietnam, for example, where arsenic actually has a very high level of naturally in the soil, and this darn plant really likes to pick it up. It also loves a lot of bacteria, and it loves mold. And in our earliest projects, and we'll talk about the supply chain here in a minute, going back to inception, the biggest problem that we've had is given the right environment, this will unfortunately bring the crop to its knees. And we've seen well-documented cases, again, coming out of multiple countries, where losses in the neighborhood of $30 to $40 million is not unusual if not managed well. And unfortunately, up until recently in some jurisdictions, the crop wasn't even insurable. So our goal as a company right from the get-go had always been to envision the supply chain in a way that could be stabilized. And in so doing, much of the lessons that we put into play almost a decade ago are now finding a good home in the stressed economy that we're in today. And I'm going to share with you some lessons learned from this and some opportunities that we've been deploying to our client base to help them see this bottom trough cycle, as Emily was talking about earlier this morning. Now, this crude diagram, and I put it up here for a reason, is the supply chain as my team mapped out back in 2012. And in 2012, we had yet to get Uruguay, we'd yet to get Canada, but we could see the emerging market horizon. And what we were trying to best understand is where did we stand in terms of any industrial hope of meeting international demand? Now, as a former federal prosecutor of drugs, of psilocybin and cannabis, I have to say I knew what the technology looked like. We did a lot of the medical health warrant houses for a number of Department of Health in Western Canada. And the technology was the 3Ds, dark, dank, and dangerous. It wasn't anywhere near industrial scale. And when we first went live in Canada in June, of 2013, we were taking effectively grandma's basement and replicating it more times, hoping that that would get us to an industrial revolution, so to speak, of technology. Certainly has come a long way, and we're going to review that at the end of the presentation today. But the point of my talk is we saw what was necessary to be able to get into large-scale industrial at a way that we knew would be a race to the bottom in terms of price per production per gram. But we also looked at it from a point of view, from a federal prosecutor's point of view, how the heck could we do this on an international scale that would allow for international banking to work? And one of the reasons why we are, of course, located here in Panama, and this is our Center of Excellence in Panama as a head office, with offices in Calgary, and we have staff in the US and staff in London and in Sydney, Australia right now. The reason that we put it here, though, is we've got international concentration of banks that is rare. And it is also a jurisdiction that went through Panama Papers, that got blacklisted in Europe, and the banks are hypersensitive with regards to doing any transactions that touch cannabis. And for us being able to demonstrate to them our methodology as how that could be done, I'm going to share with you how that's done and how it will leapfrog into other new sectors that are emerging through COVID. It's opened very much, as I said, these new opportunities for us. Now, in regards to the supply chain, it has unfortunately advanced effectively in 7 years. The aeronautics industry had 200 years to build supply chain. Auto had 100 years. We had none. We had zero. And because of that, trying to even get jurisdictions that were lining up consistently on the law was difficult. And it's gotten to the point, certainly for the new emerging markets, where we've crafted the law for them. And in working with a variety of governments around the world, 11 in total so far, putting in entirely new frameworks or fixing the ones that are broken have very much been the order of the day. But we're also building frameworks that can extend to include other sectors, such as the emerging psychedelics market, what we'll chat and touch on as emerging opportunity, as well as urban farm food as an opportunity, utilizing the same auditors and inspectors of departments that are horribly overwhelmed right now within these jurisdictions, but provide opportunity for the government to be able to contribute losses to GDP in a way that would help these countries get back on their feet without risking the loss of their international banking. And that has been a real risk for us in many of these jurisdictions. So for example, before we move to tech that we feel was best suited to solve these problems, for example, with regards to countries that have had a long-standing history of illicit grow ops, for example, convincing a bank that large-scale outdoor grow is a way to make a product that can be consumed and shipped internationally, though it may be agreeable at a regulatory level, and it may be agreeable at a state or provincial level, at the end of the day, the bank says no. It's purely a policy decision. If they can't track it, they're not going to let it in the bank. And anyone that is here, and I'd call for a raise of hands, how many of you have lost bank accounts? You know exactly what I mean. And in Canada, when we warned Health Canada well in advance of 2016, that loss of traceability of product was rampant, no one listened until all 5 banks closed them, often with 22 or 28 days notice before that happened. Uruguay, 3 years later, shutting down the banks for the pharmacies. This wasn't just an issue of international US bank, intermediary bank issues. This was fundamentally a traceability issue. And without it, we ran into huge problems. So the way that we've approached this issue, and I'm just going to share the sites so you can get your own information because very limited time today. The first thing that we had to convince banks is that whatever is being produced could be strictly monitored and controlled. And the other issue we had, especially working with the earliest producers, is we found that much of the product that was being produced had huge rates of variability. Now, coming from an agricultural background myself, and certainly wanting to be at the equator where there's a lot of free sunlight, as much as that sounds like fun, the reality is that this plant, if you take our tour here, the plant does in fact vary distinctly with regards to slight variations with regards to lighting, temperature, humidity, CO2, nutrient schedule, and as I said, it loves to contaminate itself routinely with chemical and biological outputs. Being able to control the root causes of the variation allow the batch to repeat. And working with the larger producers, certainly out of Canada, which are some of the largest in the world, when we were watching batch variability of 17%, That's not medicine. That's not a product for research and development. That's wine, maybe, at best. So being able to strictly control and repeat the batch, especially on a whole plant extract, which is where the industry is purely heading right now, was the way to go. And so we built a technology that manages that and controls and allows for those batches to be repeated. The other thing that we had to do is that traceability. Let's say we repeat the batch and we get it in a form that will always ensure high value for that batch. Could we then track it? In order to do that, tracking the package wasn't enough. We knew that. And we predicted that we'd start running into problems in early 2015. And then we started to see it, really see it, watch it happen, where licensed locations were not honestly recording all of the on-site use of the product within its four walls. If it lost a batch, it was going out to the illicit market to get product, to bring it in, to put it in a package with a white label and send it back out the door. That's called the gray market. And the gray market soared to the point, again, that we started seeing license suspensions. CannTrust in Canada is a very good case in this, but I can go through many other countries to show you how it happened. But once we showed that we can show where the grams come from and how they can be recorded within a confined space, that there's no chance that it's the other farm or field 20 miles down the road that's illicit, being added to illicit to get into oil production, for example. And we were able to track both the plant as raw material and the oil as finished goods. Then they started to listen. And that took every effort of my being. Both walking into their offices of senior compliance officers as both a prosecutor, former prosecutor, and someone who understands regulatory matters, someone who also ran an ISO 17025 lab, to be able to show to them that we can satisfy those issues to a FAT, F, and FinCEN compliance level. Only then did they allow their national banks to open up to us. And that for us was the holy grail of the industry. If we could get the banks that level of comfort, then large scale transactions can happen. But I can tell you this, and I'm sure you know, banks don't come to our conferences. Banks rarely, if ever, get to the big international ones. They're starting to now, mostly at our request. But because they can't mitigate their risk, the biggest issue will be is that if you've got a product that's showing up in a facility that they can't account for, maybe 2 weeks notice, pull your money out and try again, or have your large wire bounce. And then that is a fundamental problem with regards to outdoor grow. And right now we have 7 new jurisdictions that will only allow hemp to be grown for the 42,000 other uses, except for human consumption. Everything else is going to be indoors and it has to be strictly monitored. To do that, you have to get a wrapper. We have our OS2 software. It's ending version 6, moving to version 7 now, multilingual, multi-currency, country interoperable, that allows the traceability of all those grams, including blockchain from consumption, destruction, recall, all the way back to tissue culture, for example, to follow it. And because of that, we have been able, as I said, through our centers of excellence, demonstrate to the regulatory powers that be in the banks to allow us to do business internationally. And that for us was the supply chain that had to come together for us very quickly. Now, to wrap this up and show you where we see the opportunities, at the end of the day, we had to, show that it could work within multiple jurisdictions and be able to flex as different jurisdictions got very busy while others were being sequestered or put into quarantine. And we have a very distributed model. Any LPs that we work with are designed to be country interoperable. So if we do have a closure or a shutdown in one, we can pick up and transfer opportunity to another and be able to shift that weight or that burden to other jurisdictions that are still in play. And that was very important. Also, with regards to the technologies that we have, be able to have them incorporated and work either as a standalone service and technology company or as part of an overall solution, which is Benchmark Solution. And that gave us multiple verticals of revenue and opportunity. Now, the emerging markets for us to wrap up are real quick. The psychedelic space has come on like lightning. But again, it's cannabis 0.0 version 0.0 all over again. There is no industrial supply. On the left with cannabis, within 7 years, we went from just smoking this product as a medical product and tried doing that in the ICU, good luck, to veterinarian, research and development, recreational, of course, and then the all-important medical. Right now in psilocybin, we don't have that yet. In fact, we're extending our facilities to be able to develop and extend the technologies we have to get into those markets without having to do much muss or fuss with regards to the existing facility. Why is that important? Because it's going to allow LPs that are for cannabis be able to extend their SKU line to another new vertical market, which, as we've seen reported everywhere, is going to ramp up to the same market levels that we see for cannabis. And especially after COVID, with the depression issues that we have, it being the primary alternative instead of opioids to help people that are struggling and dealing with mental health issues through COVID. Last but not least is urban farming is taking off like a rocket because the supply chain has broken, especially with regard to transfer of product out of country. Even here in Panama, our center of excellence, the picture that you see here, we've been paying to convert it to make fruits and vegetables within the equipment that we already have on site, because then they can get it into the stores downtown Panama much faster and not be cut off by curfew at the end of the day, which is what's happening for the distance in which their drivers have to travel. To do that supply chain effectively, all the pieces still have to be in play to preferably an EU GMP compliant standard. And then from there, be able to show the bank that the money that's coming in is tracked to the grams that are going back out. And then from there, show the quality assurance auditors that everything won't load them any more than they already are. And because this system is well designed as a supply chain for quality without contaminants, we're not going to add more people to the hospital list, which is music to the ears of government. I can tell you that right now. So our team, as I said, has had to be deployed. It's mainly just be able to manage all the country shutdown risk. That is difficult on a good day, but I can say multiple jurisdictions have opened up very quickly. New Zealand is back on its feet, for example. Australia has not lost a step. Zimbabwe and South Africa have certainly had their issues, but we are starting large-scale projects there and without missing beats. So it is possible, but you have to go hunting, and good luck on that hunting for you. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Did have a question about what are the 2 to 3 key success factors based on your data that differentiate successful cannabis cultivators?
Repeatability, repeatability, repeatability. Right now, especially with good strains that can be purchased, if not managed well, you're doing yourself a horrible disfavor. We also have seen this emergence of research going to a full plant extract. And full plant extract means that. It doesn't mean grab a bunch of batches and then pull the molecules apart during our extraction process and then reformulate them at the end of the day. All you're going to get is paint, but it's going to be different colored paint between each of the batches in which you try to produce. And it's horribly expensive and it's time consuming. If we can show that the batches are equal and like, and we're not losing batches for chemical and biological contamination, then the model is brilliant. The profitability, as most know, is exceptionally high, and it's better than most, if any, other industries we've worked with in the last decade. But you have to control your crowd.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.